Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of Security Amplified. My guest today is Erik Wille. Erik is currently the CTO of CabinetWorks Group. Erik joined CabinetWorks in 2023 as SVP and CISO. And prior to joining CabinetWorks, Erik had leadership roles at American Axle and Manufacturing and Penske Automotive Group. So welcome to the podcast, Erik.
Thank you very much, Kamal. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to talk today about leveraging AI in security and scaling security with AI. But before we dive into that, you have made a relatively rare transition from a CISO to CTO at CabinetWorks. So please share how that came about and how does your security background and your broader information technology background apply to this new role?
Yeah, absolutely. So a component of it, I would say, is right place, right time, right? So having joined CabinetWorks, we are PE backed. And when PE firms don't like a direction that a company's going, they are very good about making change very quickly. Part of that is new leadership was brought in, which cascaded to the vast majority of the executive team transitioning on, which kind of put me in a position that luckily our CEO had some trust in me and decided that, hey, we're going to move you into the role on an interim basis. So that was May. And then in October announced the full-time role. So it was a bit surprising for me, but incredibly awesome opportunity at the same time. You think about it from a security lens, that the cool thing about security is the visibility that we have across the organization, because context matters in what we do, which means we have to understand what all of the different business functions are doing to understand the telemetry and alerts that are coming out. So I would say that put me in a great position to understand really what's going on across the organization. And then if you think about in security and all of the innovation that's happening, whether it be AI or some of the different developments before that, there is a culture of change, and whether that's changing out tools or things that we're doing differently, and being able to transition that and bring that same mindset to the broader IT team. And how can we continue to drive value in the organization and drive that innovation culture has been hugely beneficial. It's been a fun journey.
Amazing. And in your short time as CTO, you have transformed IT from a technology delivery function into a customer-focused business enabler. So how did that come about, and how does AI play into that strategic shift moving forward?
Yeah, so for us, I would say it centers around customer delight. And the term was there before I moved into the CTO role. But the way we thought about customer delight previously was only in the context of how we serve our customers. So our external customers, right? Which is extremely important. Being a B2B organization, we want to make sure that we deliver excellence so that our customers, so in our case, our designers building kitchens, that we want them to continue to come back to us because of the great experience they're having. Well, if you think about that, in IT, we have customers as well. Our customers are sitting across the organization. So we started to expand that definition to say, well, we need to delight our customers who are then serving our external customers, right? So with that focus in mind, what we started to do is, instead of meeting everybody directly with technology and kind of trying to push that down on everybody, that it's meet people where they are. Lean in, listen, understand what their actual problems are. And then as we co-develop solutions, we can bring technology into the mix and show how that it can help them solve some of their problems. And that's really where AI comes into how we go to market within the organization itself. That it is yet another tool, and I feel like I'm not doing it service to call it another tool, because comparatively to what we've seen in the past, just the ability for it to truly transform how we run as an organization is vastly different than any technology or anything we've seen in the past. But that becomes another opportunity as we are co-solutioning across the organization, that we can bring AI to bear as a way to solve some of their problems. Keeping that in mind, we've made a cognitive decision that AI strategy doesn't sit in a silo all on its own, right? That it becomes a component of every strategy. And as part of every strategy, there's maturity steps that have to happen to get us to a place where we can actually unleash AI to be an exponential game changer for us. But we're making the decision to build that into those strategies so that we know as we work on data maturity, process maturity, that there's an inflection point on, all right, now we're ready to start building AI into the organization or into the various business functions to gain some of those efficiencies.
Yeah, it makes sense. And as you think about leveraging AI, how do you, as an organization, think about AI governance and AI security, right? You mentioned data being an important element of that, but what are the broader guidelines that you're operating with as you think about governance and security for AI?
Yeah, so I would say our governance is around having a conversation. That's kind of how I'd put our policy. Watched a lot of organizations that as you see the proliferation of ChatGPT, that security organizations just put down the guardrails and that no, can't have it. Well, okay, like I understand some of the risks, but we know that people are still going to use it. They're now going to use it in a riskier fashion, right? So for us, it was more around helping the organization understand that these are the types of information that we want to protect, right? Whether we're talking PII, PHI, anything confidential, proprietary to our organization, let's have a conversation on how you want to use AI in that context to understand if it, number one, does it make sense for what the business problem that you're trying to solve? And are we doing it in the right fashion? And I'll tell you, the eye-opening thing for me is actually, I think you can gain a lot of that information from just reading a contract with many companies, that there are a lot of vendors out there that from a sales perspective just slapped AI on, but you start to read the contract, you hold all the liability, which tells me they're not ready, they don't really believe in it. But then you see some of the other business partners that are all in, have done it right, and it's kind of a shared model, transparent on what they're doing with the information. And so a lot of it is at the contractual level that we've started to go through and scrutinize some of the different use cases.
Yeah, I love the focus on the business problem and then thinking about, hey, what's the best solution to that problem as opposed to AI for AI's sake, right? Because there may be solutions or problems that are solved with basic automation where AI may not necessarily be the answer.
100%. Yeah, if you think about it, that we kind of saw some of this play out when blockchain came out, that we went around with the technology looking for a problem. And as technologists, our eyes light up when we see these new things. And that's what we naturally gravitate for. Hey, I've got this cool technology. Does it fit here? Does it fit here? Does it fit here? Rather than truly understanding what the business problem is. And there's some business problems that, there's simple automation that you can do with either a script or something it's very much, there's no decision that it's, I think about it that anybody who's watched the show Lost, that it's the red button, you just push it over and over again. It's just time. Okay, well then AI is probably overkill for that. But then there's those processes where you truly need to gain insights, and it's kind of a conversation, building human into the loop, that it's much more complex and nuanced. Now that's something that we should start looking at AI to bring into the mix.
Yeah, I love that approach. And it's refreshing to hear and not just use AI because it's the latest, greatest technology. Now, you were one of the early adopters of AI in security. So walk us through the process that you and your organization went through to think through the business problems that you are facing in security and how or why AI was a logical fit to solve that problem.
As we think about the evolution and growth of the security organization, that one of our goals is to continually gain greater visibility into what's going on in the organization. What does that mean? Typically that we have new tools that are coming in, or the tools that we have, we're generating more data, which leads to more alerts. And if we're generating more data, if we're generating more alerts, that means that's creating additional work on the team that already exists. as we thought through this, there were projects that we intentionally shot down because we knew it was the right project, but we didn't have the capacity to actually do anything with the data, which meant it kind of put us in a position on starting to take a step back and look at, all right, we know that we can't infinitely scale the team and continue to throw people at it. It's a cost equation. It just doesn't work that way, right? And at the same time, we know attacks are becoming more sophisticated. They're becoming more frequent. And that put us in a position that we had to, if people are our bottleneck, how can we find a way to make our people more efficient, which led us to Agentic AI is that game changer and kind of looking at it through the lens of theory of constraints on that we could add exponential force to the bottleneck to free up our people to do much more, allowing us to take on new projects and draw down on the risk across the organization. So it became that natural fit to the problem of capacity that we had.
Great. So you identified a problem. You felt that AI was a good solution, or agentic AI was a good solution to that problem. And then you went out and you looked at, okay, what security tools are available that are leveraging AI to go solve that problem? Now, there's a lot of hype in the market. So how did you and your team think through what separates, genuine agentic AI capability from vendor hype or pretty demos? Like, what questions should your peers or security leaders ask when they're evaluating AI native security tools?
I would look at it through the lens of, because I agree with you, there is a lot of hype out there. There are a lot of vendors that just slap on, yeah, we have AI. Okay, well, it's one little piece in the overall puzzle, right? So we think about and look at the vendor landscape or the partner landscape. It's really understanding, well, is this a feature or is this the core of the service that's being delivered? And we needed the latter, right? That for the longest time in the security community that we've been sold this, that the SIEM was going to be, it's going to pull everything together, single pane of glass, that it's going to do everything. Sure, like the SIEMs have been glorified databases and they've evolved, they've gotten better, but by and large, a SIEM lacks context. That it's good at mapping data flows, but I still have a problem of a large chunk of data that I have to sift through. And that's only a piece of the puzzle bringing into a single location, right? We also needed to free up our people to do more, which meant that when an alert, number one, that the noise ratio, we needed to have an answer to be able to what can generate or what can get rid of the noise that's out there that we are wasting a lot of time on, where a tool that has visibility and thinks like a security analyst can make that decision for us. Cool. Step number one. Number two, that for those alerts, we know there are going to be some that we have to chase down. That's why we have a job, right? How can I make my senior most people more efficient so that when an alert comes out, something has already thought like them and has pulled together the necessary information that they need to make the decision? So that was kind of the second criteria that we looked at, which led us to profit and the exponential kind of effect that it's had on the team, making them more efficient. I think when we initially launched, you think about the noise ratio, 98%, I want to say, of our alerts were automatically taken off. That there was already, Profit was able to answer that for us, which freed us up to do so much more within the organization.
Reflecting on your comments, sounds like you had an important measurement criteria around eliminating noise, so eliminating false positives and doing that accurately, reducing mean time to response for alerts that were malicious or true positives, and then driving efficiency and productivity for your team, not just for your senior analysts, but also for your junior analysts or folks who are early in their career in security. Is that?
Yeah, you're spot on. It's interesting, and I hadn't even thought about this going into it, but you talk about the junior analysts, that one of the drawdowns, so you need to continually have new people coming into the organization, right? We know there's going to be churn. There's a lot of companies that are looking for security practitioners. And frankly, as you think about it, that kind of a lower end large cap company comparatively to some of your Fortune 100, what we can pay individuals, there's a delta between them, right? So we know there's going to be churn. But as you think about it, to bring on somebody junior means that I have to take time out of the senior people to start training them up. Well, that's taking them kind of out of rotation. They're not available to look at alerts, and it's very time consuming. So what I hadn't thought about is going into this, that with agentic AI, that it's already thinking like our senior analysts, and the transparency that it brings on how it thinks about the alert and the context around it, what's going on, is actually a great way to train up our junior analysts. That now they are immersed into, I'm not just seeing the alert, I'm seeing laid out how the tool is thinking about it, and has really drawn down on the kind of the mean time to efficiency on being able to build them up and get them to think like our senior most people. It's been super cool to see that transition.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just going back a little, you raised an important point about SIEMs, right? And SIEMs were designed to be a central repository of all your logs. So when there was an alert, you could go to one place to go and retrieve the information or the context needed to decide if it was a true positive or a false positive, as opposed to having to log into multiple tools and do swivel chair across different tools. But it feels that SIEM didn't quite solve that problem because it's challenging for most organizations to get all their data into one place. So is that accurate? And how do you think about the future of SIEM? And do you think that the world's going to move to a distributed SIEM where you have data sitting in different data stores, and then you have agentic AI that's pulling in information across those different data sources to bring that context for your security teams?
Absolutely agree that's where we need to be and where we're heading right now. So you think about the SIEM, one of the biggest problems that we had is the tools that are available are very good at ingesting data. But when you ingest the data, it's sitting in little data silos. And that's where, when I say context matters, and starting to understand that what happens in this bucket, well, what does it mean when I start to look at it across those different buckets or those different log sources? And I feel like that's where a lot of the SIEMs out there left you to write your own correlation rules and have to imagine what I would have to care about. So we're manually going through, well, I see this log coming from the machine itself. Well, now I need to go to EDR to pull this. Now I got to go up to Azure to pull this. And the data was there, but it was highly manual to be able to piece it together to build that map of what really all transpired. That frankly, that if you think about it, we bought all of these individual tools because they fit our organization really well and what we were trying to do from a risk perspective. So now I'm somewhat unwinding the value proposition of those tools. If I have to take their data and put it in a tool that doesn't really think the way the tool does, but if we can get to a point, as you were saying about agentic AI, that now I can go directly into the tool and leverage them the way they were purposely built, that is a complete game changer. Do I think it gets rid of SIEM? Probably not, because you've still got compliance issues. You think about PCI having to retain logs for so long. So I think SIEM as maybe a repository to go back to for raw data, that there's probably still some value there. But I think where we're heading is kind of the hyper integration across the tool stack and being able to leverage them so much more and bring them together through agentic AI.
Continuing on with that argument, we also run into SIEM purists that say, hey, put everything in a SIEM, and if not, then you can leverage SOAR technologies, which are now part of a SIEM, to drive some of that automation. Was that a consideration for you when you're looking at agentic AI to say maybe we can codify some of those playbooks or enrichment to get the context needed, leveraging SOAR tools, or that wasn't really a consideration for you and your team?
Yeah, the SOAR space is interesting. I will tell you, when that kind of the acronym came out, it's like, oh, this is really cool. That makes total sense. Me personally, I don't think it delivered on what we needed. that being able to do workbooks and build out the automations, it was directionally correct, but it was still beholden on the creativity of the people on your team to be able to build out all of those run books. So it always left us in a space where we were reactionary. We would see something net new. Okay, well, now we need to alter this workbook. We have to do something different. So I think it made us slightly more efficient, but it wasn't the exponential gain that we thought it was going to be.
Awesome. Makes perfect sense. One last question from me, and then we'll talk about quick answers here. You're active in the Detroit CISO community. You have your own podcast. What are you hearing from your peers about the biggest challenges they see around security and scaling security programs?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of scare coming out on kind of the evolution of quantum is a big one. I mean, AI in general, not AI that we're using for us, but being used against us. So I think there's still kind of that age-old fear of the unknown, that we don't know what the next big attack is going to be. And that's that kind of, I don't want to say it keeps us up at night, but it definitely keeps you on your toes, trying to figure out, all right, where's the industry going? Because, I mean, if you think about it, if technology is moving and innovating at a breakneck pace, we know the attackers are going to do the same thing. So I think a lot of the conversation really centers around how do we retool, how do we re-architect to put ourselves in a position where we can, as an organization, be more agile and being able to pivot and address those evolving taxes as we see them come in.
Looking ahead, 12 to 18 months, what AI security capability do you think becomes table stakes or must-haves for enterprise security programs?
Yeah, agentic AI, 100%. I think those security organizations that continue to rely on the levers that we had in the past of just adding people, or, I mean, heck, in many cases where you can't add people, what do? We turned off log sources, or we trimmed down what our tools were looking at. I think the vast majority of organizations are going to wake up to what we can now do to leverage the tech stack that we've already got in, and recognize that agentic AI allows us to gain so much more out of investments that we already have without requiring a huge uplift in manual effort to write correlation rules, right? So I would see a lot of organizations heading in that direction, because frankly, we've all been sitting back saying, hey, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough people. Okay, if we all agree that that's the case, what are we doing to be more efficient with the people that we have? And I think that's where agentic AI comes in, and a lot of companies are going to really double down on it.
Yeah, we consistently hear security teams are being asked to do more with the same. And so, getting headcount in this environment is challenging. At the same time, for folks that do get headcount, they also talk about how they can't hire people fast enough, right? Because there is 5 million unfilled positions in security. And so even finding talented security practitioners is also a challenge. And that's, again, where we are seeing companies look at agentic AI as a way to solve that problem. So with that, we'll end on a rapid fire set of questions. Erik, so here we go. If you could have a conversation with someone, whether they're still with us or not, who would it be? What would you discuss and why?
Oh, man. That's, for me, I would actually, Marshall Goldsmith. The first book I read in leadership was What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it was eye-opening for me, thinking about the transition from being a technologist only to a leader of people. And it's vastly different. And the conversation I would love to have with him on is kind of the disservice that we've done across, as we think about training up the next wave of people leaders. I think we've done a disservice that we've synonymously used manager and leader as interchangeable. And I don't believe that's the case, right? So I would really be interested in his take on why we've struggled to help people transition to being a true leader and empowering the people that work for them. And he just seems like a super interesting guy. I mean, having listened to some of his audiobooks as well, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I love your distinction between being a manager and being a leader. So that's brilliant. Your beverage of choice?
Beverage of choice is a lime LaCroix. I don't know why, but there is something that is just super refreshing. And I guess it's healthy because it's water with no calories, no sugar or anything. So
I love it.
I go to.
What's the book or podcast that you've listened to recently that you would recommend?
Yeah, so the book I just finished was Co-Intelligence from Ethan Mollick. It was super cool. And that's I love the line from him on the AI that you're using today is the dumbest AI you'll ever use. Right? We are in an era of innovation that is happening probably faster than we've ever seen it. And it is absolutely incredible to sit back and watch the changes day by day and start to be able to bring that and infuse that within our organizations to fundamentally change how we do things. Great book for those who haven't read it.
Absolutely. One of my all-time favorites as well. And last question, what's the kindest thing someone's ever done for you?
The kindest thing, I would say, I've got to give a shout out to my girls. So recently he had a surgery that had to lay in bed for a while. And somebody, actually the leadership team at Cabinet Works, had sent me a care package that had a little bell in it. And I thought, all right, there's no way they're going to like it. But my girls loved it. They thought it was super cool. They all picked up a different role that, one was a nurse, one was, I think, the physical therapist, and just their ability to step up and help out was super cool.
Well, you clearly done a great job raising your girls. So congratulations there. And Erik, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kamal. It was fun.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the podcast.